yes, sir, yes, this Honorable Superior Court for the County of Wake is not convened and sitting for this special session. The Honorable Judge Brian Collins is present presiding. Yes, yes. God save the citizens. Please be seated. Remain quiet. Please make sure all cell phones are on silent. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Deputy Collins. Thank you very much. I want to welcome all of you to this special ceremonial session of the Wake County Superior Court. It's my great honor to be here presiding over this. From time to time, we come together and honor and celebrate the memories of our departed colleagues and loved ones. In light of that, since this is a celebration, the rules of court are much relaxed. Feel free to take pictures, to laugh, to cry, to join in, and enjoy yourself. I think if you've never been to one of these before, you're in for a treat. We have a lot to do today, so in light of that, and in fairness and respect for everybody's time, I'm going to ask the speakers to stick strictly to their allotted time. I appreciate that very much. I'm going to turn the program over to the Executive Director of the Wake County Bar, Whitney Von Hom.
Good afternoon, everybody. A warm welcome from the 10th Judicial District Bar. My name is Whitney Von Hom, and I've had the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of the 10th Judicial District Bar and the Wake County Bar Association for the past 15 years. And I'm here in place of our President, Jake Epstein, who woke up this morning without a voice. So I did what every Executive Director said and said, don't worry, I'll handle it. This is one of my favorite parts of my job. It is such a heartwarming, collegial time that we get to spend recognizing our members. And for the family members here, I can appreciate where this might not be as comfortable of a location for you as where you have spent most of your time with your family members, but I can speak as the daughter of a lawyer who has been similarly memorialized by his local bar in Pennsylvania, that it is an incredibly special event. So I'm glad you're here today. But for our colleagues here, I hope that you will walk away with something that you didn't come into this room with. It is one of those moments where we remember what a professional, what a collegial, and what a special bar we have. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. I know that you'll walk away with something better than you came in. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. As chair of the Memorials Committee, I also want to welcome you to this special memorial session of court. Our local bar holds several of these sessions a year. I especially enjoy the ones that are held during the season of gratitude, because gratitude is really the underpinning of these memorial sessions. As a bar, we are grateful for the lives of these 8 distinguished lawyers we honor today. We are thankful for their contributions to the bar, to the profession, and to our community. We are also grateful to you, their families, friends, and colleagues, for sharing them with us and for allowing us to remember them at this special session of court, and in so doing, to keep their memories alive. Hopefully, as Judge Collins and Whitney have said, this will be a time, an hour that you can reflect and remember, as well as share a laugh or two. Our first honoree is David Michael Blackwell, and he will be remembered by Mike Dayton.
Wow, a big crowd. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Mike Dayton, a former employee of Dave Blackwell. I worked for David for about 20 years, and we were good friends for more than 3 decades. It's my humble honor to share memories of him. From Dave's obituary, David Michael Blackwell Sr. was born in Stacy, North Carolina on October 18, 1939. His parents were the late Ivy Julius Blackwell and Bessie Mae Irby Blackwell. David attended Hargrave Military Academy and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he walked on the baseball team. He earned his undergraduate and law degrees from UNC. David was married to Elizabeth Beth Crouch Blackwell. She's here. They have one son, David Michael Blackwell Jr., who was born in 1987. He's also here. David's career path spanned several professions. He was a lawyer, a legislator, a Superior Court clerk, and the executive director of the North Carolina Academy of Trial Lawyers. Dave was also the publisher of North Carolina Lawyers Weekly. During his tenure there, Dave established 2 other legal newspapers, South Carolina Lawyers Weekly and Paralegal News. It's simply not possible to sum up the life of the man we all knew, but it's my very sincere hope that Dave would approve of this tribute. At Lawyers Weekly, we often compiled lists of interest to the legal community. For example, we did a special issue on the 25 largest law firms. Today, I'd like to share one more list, 10 reasons why we loved working with Dave. Number 10, Dave had unique hiring skills. As one colleague put it, Dave didn't really care too much about what school you went to or what your experience was. Dave was really trying to get a feel for you as a person. He wanted to know what your interests were outside of work. For example, the places you traveled to, the books you'd read, the sports you'd watched or played, and your favorite beer and barbecue. Number 9, Dave believed in an open door policy, and I mean that literally. Dave's office door was nearly always wide open. That allowed us to speak to him at any time. Dave never turned anyone away. Dave was a busy man, but he always made time for each and every one of us. Number 8, Dave was the best non-boss. Dave never told us to do our jobs. He made a point to stay out of the way unless you walked through that open door and asked for help. Number 7, Dave was a family man. Dave dearly loved Beth and Dave. They're here. He also treated the Lawyers Weekly staff as one big happy family, each person as important as the next. Dave made it a point each day to visit each of us at our offices. Dave was not there to talk about work. He just wanted to connect. Number 6, Dave the mediator. Dave did not tolerate bickering among his employees. He was a peacemaker. Whenever a dispute arose, Dave would put on a lawyer's cap and act as an informal mediator. The parties might not like the outcome, but they knew their side had been fully and fairly heard. Number 5, Dave knew how to mix business with pleasure. Several of us remember riding with Dave to Wilson to see the city's baseball stadium. The stadium is where the NC Baseball Hall of Fame is located. As I've already mentioned, Dave was a walk-on player for the UNC baseball team. A great time was had by all, and after the baseball museum, we made one final stop at what Dave said was a world-renowned restaurant, a place in Wilson called Dick's Hot Dog Stand. If you guys been there, it's pretty good. It's still there, but I checked. Number 4, we love Dave for his motor vehicles. At one time or another, Dave owned a Porsche, a BMW motorcycle, a Chevy Corvette, and a beautiful brown and tan Volkswagen bus. I bring up the cars because Dave was a generous guy who didn't mind sharing. When my family vacationed on Hatteras Island, Dave always loaned us his VW bus. He could load it up with suitcases and surfboards, not to mention several passengers, which included Dave Jr., who often vacationed with us. Number 3, Dave loved music and wasn't afraid to show it. Dave had a great singing voice, and we'd often hear him singing at the office. Some of Dave's favorite artists were bluegrass singers, including Doc Watson, Tony Rice, and Ricky Skaggs. Number 2, Dave gave us credit for each and every success. Dave was a modest man who never took credit for his accomplishments at Lawyers Weekly. He made sure the credit stayed with the staff. At the same time, Dave was one who personally accepted all the responsibility for our many mistakes. Okay, and number 1, Dave was a lawyer, a legislator, and a lobbyist, and at the end of the day, he was our leader. He taught us how a leader, talks and acts, how a leader approaches difficult situations, and most importantly, how a leader treats other people always with a big heart and an open mind. Allow me to send heartfelt gratitude to Dave's wife, Beth, and Dave's son, David Jr., for their untiring love of David. Beth was an incredibly loving wife to Dave, especially during the time of his declining health. His son, Dave, kindly known to our family as Little Dave, brought great happiness and joy to Big Dave throughout his life. I provided only a glimpse of the many sides of David Blackwell. It's true Dave did not have great eyesight, but he did have great vision. Dave touched us with his generosity, his humor, and his incredible ability to see things for what they really are. I'm forever grateful for the invaluable lessons Dave taught us, and I'm a better person because of his thoughtful guidance and immeasurable wisdom. Once again, please allow me to send my deepest sympathies to Beth and David Jr., and allow me to send Dave these parting words. Dave, we love you. You're dearly missed. Thank you.
Thomas Alvin Farr will be remembered by Phil Strach.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to all of our distinguished guests, and the most distinguished as far as Tom is concerned is his loving wife, Ann Robinson Farr, who's here in the front row. My name is Phil Strach. I practiced law with Thomas Alvin Farr for over 25 years. Who I am as a lawyer today is due in large part to Tom's leadership, mentorship, and friendship. Tom Farr was a lawyer's lawyer. He was a giant in his fields of employment law and redistricting law. In fact, in the space of redistricting, he helped argue the case of Shaw v. Reno, which established the racial gerrymandering claims that over time increased minority representation in Congress and in legislatures throughout the country. He also argued employment law cases at the appellate level in North Carolina that established precedent that has withstood the test of time. But when I think about Tom's impact in the legal profession, two things come to mind immediately: mentorship and civility. Take mentorship as an example. Tom always said that every young lawyer needs a mentor. He lamented about young lawyers who practiced in ways that seemed to indicate a lack of mentorship. Mentorship was extremely important to him, and I saw day in and day out how valuable that was to me and the other young lawyers who practiced with him. Mentorship comes in many forms. Sometimes it came in the form of red ink on your draft brief, and Tom did most of his writing in handwriting on a yellow pad. Later, when he learned how to use email, he would send stream of consciousness emails. I'm sure some of the lawyers in this room can appreciate that. But he practiced what he preached, and he made countless impressions on younger lawyers like me and those lawyers who would come behind me. In one case, over a break, Tom became convinced that he had misrepresented something to the court. He actually didn't. He was just paranoid about it. When we came back on the record, he stood up to correct the perceived issue and stated that he wanted to be sure that he didn't misrepresent anything to the court. Judge Ridgway said something along the lines of, "No one would ever accuse you, Mr. Farr, of misrepresenting something to the court." Tom's willingness to err on the side of caution made a lasting impression on every younger lawyer, including me, who was participating in that trial. And the fact that the court would not even think that Tom would make a misrepresentation made all the younger lawyers hope to establish that same reputation for themselves throughout their career. Tom was also one of the rare seasoned attorneys who would actually go to bat for the younger lawyers. I've had associates tell me that that is incredibly hard to find in any law firm, much less a really big law firm. Tom's willingness to fight for younger associates kept many of them from leaving the firm or leaving the practice of law altogether. Tom always made sure that younger lawyers were respected and heard. Having such a strong advocate early in your career makes a world of difference, and I and many other lawyers were blessed to have had Tom on our team. And Tom's mentorship would be paid back by the younger lawyers. Tom's relationship with technology was strained at best. He kept threatening to quit every time he had to authenticate his email on his phone. But then an associate would come to the rescue and do it for him so he wouldn't quit. Tom had his quirks, as we all do. When he was deep in thought, he would use his fingers to curl the back of his hair. This is what he would do right here. Many of you remember this. You would walk in his office and he would literally be curling his hair with his fingers. That's when you knew not to interrupt him, because he was really thinking about something. He did it so long that he developed a permanent curl on that side of his head in his hair. Aside from mentorship, Tom had a strong sense of civility in the legal profession. He had an overriding desire for professionalism, courtesy, and treating all people, especially opposing counsel, with dignity and respect. That is, after all, what the practice of law is built upon. It's an adversary system that requires you to zealously advocate for your client, but not at the expense of professionalism and human dignity. Tom understood that more than most. He made it a priority to speak with opposing counsel in a respectful way and try to get to know them on a human level, not just as an adversary in a court fight. He yielded gracefully to adverse rulings and always responded humbly when the court's ruling went his way. And this became even more evident to me after his passing, when we received an abundance of communications from opposing counsel and their clients over the years who expressed their admiration for Tom. Here's just a few of them. We heard the sad news about Tom and are sending well wishes to you both and everyone there who knew and worked with him. We always counted Tom a worthy adversary, and he was clearly liked and respected by those who knew him well. Another one, hey Phil, my condolences to you and your team and the broader Nelson Mullins family. I enjoyed the handful of one-on-one conversations I got to have with Tom. Though I only got a glimpse of it, it seemed like he had an extensive library catalog in that brain of his, and how true that was. Obviously, Tom's impact was felt far and wide, and the kind notes we received demonstrate that Tom was not just a lawyer, but a lawyer's lawyer. And to have had the opportunity to grow up as a lawyer under this man, I have been blessed and will be forever grateful. I would say to all the lawyers in this room that there can be no higher honor than to be spoken of in this manner by your adversaries. Perhaps one of Tom's greatest contributions to the legal profession was his keen sense of rising above the fray and treating counsel with dignity and respect no matter who they were. Above all, Tom exhibited the highest level of professionalism that a lawyer can exhibit. He had immense respect for the courts, the judges, and all of his opposing counsels. He contributed his talents whenever asked, whether by the local bar association, community organizations, and even a stint at one point on the North Carolina Board of Elections. He poured himself into others, even when doing so was difficult. He held the highest of ethical standards and taught the rest of us the same. He was a zealous advocate for all of his clients, whether small or large, but never at the expense of his ethics or integrity. And so in sum, I would say Thomas Alvin Farr was, in all respects, a lawyer's lawyer. Thank you.
Howard Stanley Kohn will be remembered by Judge Stephani Humrickhouse.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephani Humrickhouse. Steph, or Steffi, to the man in whose memory I speak today, Howard Kohn. Howard was born and raised in Raleigh, where he attended Sherwood Bates Elementary School, Daniels Middle School, Broughton High School, and ultimately graduated from Ravenscroft School in 1973. A top student, he also excelled in sports, all sports. At Ravenscroft, he played basketball, baseball, and quarterbacked for the football team. He was a walk-on for the Duke University JV basketball team. Once settled back in Raleigh after law school, he regularly played YMCA basketball, and City League softball. He was an avid golfer. More recently, he organized annual baseball trips to Camden Yards to watch the Orioles and whomever they were playing with his bunch of Raleigh guys. I met Howard, or H as we call him, the first day of our third year of law school at the University of North Carolina School of Law. Howard had transferred from Washington University in St. Louis after his second year. He was a Duke University undergraduate, and the very last place he wanted to be was at UNC. He made that abundantly clear and immediately clear to his new classmates. In his speech, a lot of Dookie chest puffing, and his dress, his famous anti-preppy blue suede clogs. Despite his disdain for anything in the lighter shade of blue, we became friends. And when we both ended up back in Raleigh to practice law, it was Howard who walked into Eliot's Nest with my future husband Scott on the evening of February 13th, 1981. Yes, it was a Friday. On what was to be our first date, late night at the Char Grill. Many a Friday night after that was spent at the Kohn's residence in Cameron Village, where our motley crew brought its own coolers of beer and we ate pizza, chips and dip, and chili. Those were the good old days. When I look out in the courtroom this afternoon, I can see several of the people who joined us at the Kohn's house on those evenings. They're here today to honor Howard. They are the 73s. This group of men have continued to meet on the last Monday of every month. Howard was with them on one of those Mondays just a few days before he passed, pontificating as usual about money he had won, a golf score or shot he had made, his card-playing prowess, and of course, Duke basketball and football. Thankfully for all, Howard mostly bragged about his sons. Zach, his youngest, is a senior at LSU, majoring in construction management. Josh, his older son, followed in his footsteps and is a second-year law student at Campbell University. Their father was so very proud of them. Speaking of the law, as is probably most appropriate here today, Howard practiced law in Raleigh for 44 years, mostly in the real estate transaction field, but also in other civil matters. Howard loved the law. It gave him the opportunity to give long, rambling speeches, look earnestly into our faces, and showcase his intelligence. He was a very smart and great lawyer. We discussed the law on a regular basis, and the depth of Howard's knowledge was always impressive, if not always consistent with my viewpoint. Howard had a unique work ethic. He did not really like to work every day, or even all day for that matter. But when he did our profession proud. Howard was more apt to vary and fill his days with sporting events, and I mean all types of sport. You have already heard what a great athlete he was, but he did not always contain his sport to the field, arena, or court. Howard was all in everything he did. So when he played cards a lot. When he gambled a lot. When he visited our local watering holes, he visited a lot. Always a welcome addition to every group because of his sharp wit and entertaining manner. Although he was sports-minded and immersed himself in all things manly, Howard had a softer side, unknown to many. He loved musicals, loved to sing. He had a very nice voice, not quite as nice as he thought it was, and he wrote poetry. I think he actually enjoyed spending time with my parents when they visited. They loved him, and he was a doting, if not always patient, son to Helen Kohn. He greatly loved his brother Larry and his family. Howard Kohn was my dear friend. He was eclectic, multifaceted, and downright odd at times. But as you can see from the presence of his many old friends here today, he was our eclectic, multifaceted, and odd friend, and we would not have missed knowing him for the world. We loved him and we miss him. Thank you.
Elizabeth Ann Maddox will be presented by the Honorable Elaine Marshall.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a distinct honor to speak about Lacey Maddox. She was Elizabeth by her birth certificate. She was Lib to her mother, but she was Lacey to most of us. Thank you, Rodney. You honor me to be able to share Lacey with the wider world. It was my honor to know Lacey for over 40 years. She, Rodney, and I were active in Young Democrat politics way back when. Looking over her life achievements, we would say she was a Renaissance woman, a versatile person who excelled in a wide range of fields, one with great intellectual curiosity. Lacey was intellectually curious in many fields. She graduated from Wake Forest High School, received a Bachelor of Science degree in forestry from North Carolina State. She's believed to be the first woman to do that. Her law degree was from the Lewis and Clark College of Law in Oregon, where she booked criminal procedure and developed her skills in environmental law. Lacey maintained bar membership in both states. She also studied taxation at Portland State University. Lacey had an extremely strong belief in government accountability. Accountability through transparency at the time when something is happening. She wanted to know the why behind the issues she cared about. The why was the behind-the-scenes story on legislation. She believed that public policy depended upon realities and needed to be fact-based. She spent hours at legislative committee meetings so she could understand the why and the inside story of what happened. Her work at the North Carolina Center for Public Policy Research was where she was instrumental in reports on legislative ranking of members and lobbyists through a survey by legislators and lobbyists. It was called Article 2, A Guide to the North Carolina Legislature. It was a very valuable piece of information. To increase transparency, Lacey was an early force in having the legislature add visible voting boards so that each member's vote was on record. She also did interviews with UNC-TV on committee happenings at the legislature, as well as other staff members for the NC Public Policy Research. Lacey moved transparency and accountability forward in the 1980s. She was an author of the research work entitled The Investor-Owned Hospital Movement in North Carolina. Her article compared the performances of for-profit and not-for-profit hospitals in North Carolina. Lacey served the public in a variety of ways. She was elected to 3 terms on the Wake County Soil and Water Board. Land preservation was very, very important to her. The Soil and Water Board was where she could apply her forestry and environmental knowledge for the benefit of others. Lacey served 25 years employed by the state of North Carolina in a variety of roles. As director of the North Carolina Department of Labor under 3 different commissioners, Brooks, Payne, and Berry. And later she was a special deputy with the Industrial Commission. She could be called a public policy wonk. That's why she's a perfect fit for Rodney, whom she met at North Carolina State. She was an early adopter of computer technology, which is a good thing, since Rodney was technologically challenged in the beginning and might still be today. Lacey was friendly, kind, and soft-spoken. One person in her obituary page commented that she was a no drama, no fuss, just get on with it person, with an opinion that everyone valued. Lacey cultivated her friends. She maintained long-lasting friendships, high school friends who remained in constant contact, traveled together, dined often, and savored their relationships. We're talking about 50 years of ongoing friendships. Rodney and Lacey are people of big hearts and compassion. Rodney was my chief deputy for almost my entire term so far. Because of our international work, the Department of Secretary of State and the Republic of Moldova, that association with Moldova has become a calling. It's not a assigned responsibility, but it's a calling to assist people in a distant land to move away from the Soviet bloc to democracy. It was a especially strong calling for the Maddox family. We had official interactions that created lasting friendships. They became acquainted with a group of Moldovan children living in a type of foster home in Hickory, North Carolina, with about 5 or 8 other young people. After a long, frustrating experience of adoption in another country, they became the parents of 3 teenage girls. 2 of those 3 are here today, and you'll understand at the end of my remarks why the other one is not here. We should all find comfort in the fact that she knew the joy of grandmotherhood. She was proud of Olympia's love of learning, soccer, her exceptional artistic abilities, and her generosity to others. She also knew and enjoyed Laura's first few years, especially her expressive eyes and smile. I feel sure that she knows that grandbaby David joined the family less than a week ago, which is why the third daughter is not here today. Clearly, Lacey left us too soon, but she left so many memories of joy, compassion, and accomplishment to comfort us. The world is a better place and a better informed place because Lacey Maddox did more than her part to make it that way. Thank you.
John Garland Mills will be presented by Eric Mills.
Well, hello, my name is Eric Mills. It's a privilege to speak today in memory of our father, John Garland Mills III. As the youngest of 6 children in our blended family, I'm the only one that was crazy enough to follow in his footsteps and to eventually become a patent attorney, a relevancy that I'll touch on shortly. Dad was born in Wake Forest, North Carolina. When it came time for college, his father told him he could attend any school that he wanted, as long as it was named Wake Forest. So he got his Bachelor of Science from Wake Forest College, and he eventually got his Juris Doctor from Wake Forest University once it moved to Winston-Salem. Dad's curiosity and love for tinkering naturally led him to the world of patents, copyrights, and trademarks, long before the term intellectual property became a familiar term. After law school, he joined the McDowell Law Firm in Washington, D.C., launching a legal career that spanned 50 years. Dad thrived in this area of practice and learned the art of client development, which brings me back to my point earlier about my now practicing intellectual property law and some meaningful items that he gave me when I started practicing. When I was preparing these remarks last night, I noticed a few old brass letter openers on my desk that were from the 1960s. Dad gave these to me when I started practicing, and he had acquired these when he was in D.C. At his first job. If you will, these were kind of the conference swag of that era. I actually was going to bring these in today as kind of show and tell, and then when I started looking at them, I realized I probably wouldn't get past the security downstairs the way they look. But it is interesting on these things because they basically are engraved in there. It says, the first step in patent matters is to send me a sketch or a model and $15 to cover a patent search and report on patentability. The first step in trademark matters is to send me a sample or a sketch of the mark and $15 to cover trademark search and report on registrability. Prices have gone up a little bit since then, at least at what we charge at my firm. Anyway, after his stint in D.C., Dad returned to North Carolina in the Raleigh and became patent counsel for Pointer, Garrity, Hartsfield, and Townsend, now Pointer Sproul. Eventually, he partnered with Larry Coates at Mills & Coates in Raleigh before finishing his career with his own Mills law firm in Wake Forest, of course. Dad's passions were many: boating, flying, his Navy service, and a deep commitment to the town of Wake Forest and Wake Forest University's Demon Deacons, even after the university moved west. He is also a devoted father to 6 children: Cam Mills, Scott Mills, Layman Spainhour, Michelle Mills Rose, Reeves Spainhour, and myself. And he cherished time with his 15 grandchildren. The humor of Dad was, I remember one time when we were throwing a very quick Christmas get-together right before my sister deployed to the Persian Gulf in Operation Desert Storm. And he said in front of everybody, I've got 5 boys and 1 girl, and guess who's going overseas? She eventually did okay. She ascended to the rank of Major General, and so she made him proud, as did all of his kids. Professionally, Dad loved the law. He found great joy in helping clients and sharing his knowledge with anybody willing to listen. He always enjoyed his time circulating at various bar association functions and trading legal war stories. Personally, I remember joining him on patent search trips to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office in D.C. during my high school years, and those are obviously experiences that shaped my own career thinking. Finally, I want to thank the court and the Wake County Bar Association for this opportunity to honor our father and for all those in attendance. Thank you.
William L. Ragsdale will be remembered by Rose Stout.
Today, we honor the life and legacy of a truly remarkable man, Bill Ragsdale. A brilliant lawyer, a loyal friend, a devoted family man, and a character in the truest sense of the word. Bill's presence was impossible to ignore. He carried himself with a swagger and a confidence that commanded respect, complemented by a twinkle in his eye and a mischievous, devilish smile that hinted at a quick wit and a playful spirit. And be mindful, something was about to happen. He was born in Washington, D.C. on April 12th of 1931. Bill's life was shaped early by life's hardships. His father was an iron worker from Atlanta, and he died when Bill was 7. With 6 children to raise, Bill's mother took a job in the mill, and I remember Bill telling me many times she busted her haunches to support us. At 17, he was driven by a sense of duty, determination, and adventure. He joined the Navy, and he served as a shipboard electrical technician during the Korean War. While he was in the military, he submitted an application, applied, and out of 2,000 candidates, 1,000 of them were given educational scholarships, and Bill was one of them. With this scholarship, he attended Duke because he said it was closest to Atlanta. On the morning, and this is really kind of interesting to me, but on June 6th, 1955, think about it. On that morning, he graduated with a degree in electrical engineering from Duke. That same day, he was commissioned as an ensign in the Navy. And at 8 p.m. that night, he married the love of his life, Miss Jean. That was a trifecta of achievement and happiness. His journey of service and his dedication was profound, and these milestones marked the beginning of a life filled with purpose and love. Later, Bill's journey continued at Duke. He didn't have enough Duke. So he went back and he earned his law degree in 1964. It was there that he met Ron Kirschbaum, who was a fellow student at Duke. They left Duke, came to Raleigh, opened up a law practice. Ron was a tax attorney, and Bill would joke and say, "I handled the garbage, he got the great stuff," referring to his work in domestic law, an area that was often dismissed by others, but honestly one where Bill excelled. My first encounter with Bill was in 1985, and I want you to think about this. It's an introduction, quite honestly, that I'll never forget. I was 25 years old, and I was green as new grass. I remember walking into the Wake County District Court, and if any of you remember 1985, when you got off the elevator, it was a thick of smoke, okay? I mean, you literally walked through smoke. People are smoking all over the place. I needed to see Judge Rusty Sherrill. So I go back in the back, I knock on the door, and I walk in, and Rusty's sitting there smoking himself. He's got his foot on the table, and there's this man who's sitting there, and he says something to me, and it's quite colorful, the language is, and some quite candid comments about women lawyers caught me completely off guard. But it was clear that this Bill Ragsdale, the man in the chambers, was a character, and he was a force of nature. I went back to my office and I asked my boss then, Mark Sullivan, and I said, "There was this man in chambers, his name's Bill Ragsdale," and Mark said, yeah, that's Bill Ragsdale, and he only represents men. Only represents men. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go. But from that day, our friendship blossomed, and it lasted until Bill's death, 38 years. And what an incredible ride it was. His reputation in the courtroom was formidable. He was a master of the rules of evidence as well as civil procedure. He was unshakable and often outmaneuvered his opponents with his wit and his strategic mind. His confidence, some might call was cockiness, but I think it was rooted in his experience as a Naval Reserve captain, and it gave him this air of invincibility. And so despite this fierce persona that he exhibited in the courtroom, he was profoundly human. He was kind, he was honest, he was deeply caring. He loved his family beyond measure. And he often expressed a guiding philosophy: work hard, play hard, and eat a good lunch. He often joked about his marriage to Miss Jean. He would say, "I stay married because of a four-letter word, F-E-A-R. I am afraid of my wife." But anybody that knew him knew that he adored Miss Jean with all of his heart. His pride in their relationship was evident, and he often spoke of the joy and comfort of going home to her at the end of a difficult trial. His love for his children, and he had 4, Teresa, who died from leukemia at the age of 15, William, Anne, and Frank, who are all here, and later his granddaughters. I heard a lot about his granddaughters, and great-granddaughter was palpable. But it's almost poetic. Did you hear what I just said? Here is Bill. He only represents men. He loves his wife. He's got 6 granddaughters and a daughter and 1 great-granddaughter. Karma, right? In the legal community, Bill was known as the Bomber, a nickname earned because some believed that his client sought revenge. Bill would laugh and say, "Why would any lawyer represent people who want revenge? If you want revenge, hire the mafia. It's cheaper." His approach was rooted in integrity and a genuine desire to help families find resolution, even in difficult circumstances. Bill's influence extended far beyond his courtroom victories. He transformed the careers of many young lawyers, including myself, and he made a lasting difference in the lives of countless families in this place. His legacy is one of brilliance, compassion, honesty, and an unwavering loyalty. To Bill's family, thank you for sharing him with us. Your love and support allowed us, and me in particular, to learn from a man who truly made a difference. I am forever grateful for having known him, for the lessons he imparted, for the friendship that enriched my life. Rest in peace, Bill. You are missed, but your spirit and your legacy live on in all of us who knew and admired him. Thank you.
Stephen John Schanz will be presented by Nancy Schanz.
Good afternoon, everyone, and special thanks to the Memorial Committee for allowing me to speak today. I'm not a lawyer, but after 32 years of marriage, I like to think I absorbed enough lawyering from Steve that maybe, just maybe, I qualify in spirit. So Steve was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He was the middle of 3 boys. When he came into this world, his parents were told he should be institutionalized. And that's because he was born with a condition called dwarfism, that he would never walk, he would never talk, and he would never live an independent life. But Steve's parents chose a different path for him. They taught him that the world was his to claim, that he could skate, he could play drums, and he could even dream big. And they told him there was only one thing he couldn't be, and that was in high school, and that was a football coach, which he really wanted to be, but everything else was possible. He began his education in a school for children with special needs, but by the 3rd grade, thanks to mainstreaming, he entered a regular classroom, and he never looked back. Despite significant physical challenges, Steve powered his way through high school, through college, and then Pepperdine Law School in Malibu, California. He graduated in the top 25% of his class and served on the Moot Court Honor Board. Determination was not something that Steve learned. It was something already wired in him. His legal career began at the Legal Aid Bureau of Southwestern Michigan, where he stood up for those who really needed a voice. From there, he moved into private practice and became a partner focusing on healthcare law, provider reimbursement, fraud and abuse, and anti-kickback, the complicated corners of law where his analytical mind thrived. He guided hospitals, physicians, and healthcare entities with a kind of clarity and precision that only Steve could bring. And this included a 5-year period as a retained counsel for a home infusion durable equipment medical company jointly owned by 2 hospitals and a national pharmaceutical company. But then something unexpected happened. He was asked to substitute teach a business law class, and he fell utterly, irreversibly in love with teaching. When I met Steve, I was a nurse who had just moved from North Carolina to Michigan with my 2 children. After dating, we married, and I told him that someday I hoped to move back to North Carolina. So we took a trip there. He met my Hendersonville friends, explored the state, and naturally he fell in love with North Carolina too. So we made a pact. We both send out resumes, and wherever the first job offer came from, that's really where we go. And while doing all of that, working full-time, building a marriage, raising kids, Steve decided he was going to pursue an LLM in healthcare law. That required driving from Kalamazoo, Michigan to Chicago for 5 terms in a lot of snowstorms, returning home always around midnight. No online classes, no shortcuts, just true grit. So North Carolina eventually called him, offering him a role as counsel to the House and Senate Health Committees in the General Assembly. He advised legislators, drafted proposed bills, conducted research regarding healthcare-related issues, including early attempts at creating a state Medicaid HMO, since managed care was coming into vogue about that time, but it never really materialized. Later, he joined Jordan Price, Wall, Gray, and Jones and continued shaping the healthcare landscape here in North Carolina. Steve also had an entrepreneurial spirit. He founded a company, became editor of LegaMed, and published monthly newsletters on healthcare case law, wrote 4 specialized legal medical books and periodicals on telemedicine, e-health, and the challenges of modern medicine. Long before telehealth entered the national conversation, Steve was writing the playbook. He served as adjunct associate professor at ECU and consulted with ECU Department of Medicine to develop their telemedicine program. His mind never stopped building, imagining, or improving. His expertise and writings even landed him an invitation to participate in the international consultation on telehealth, including telemedicine, at the World Health Organization in Geneva, Switzerland. But teaching, that was his calling. At Meredith College, he directed the MHA program, taught graduate and undergraduate courses, and then joined NC State, teaching in both their undergraduate and graduate courses as well. He finally decided to retire after 7 years when his undergraduate class swelled to a 400-seat lecture hall with 2 teaching assistants. And of course, they adored him, his wit, his intelligence, and his no-nonsense clarity. He only got complaints from students when they were upset with him when he would call on them in class and ask them a question. That they didn't like. So Steve also became a source of inspiration for his students, who later turned to him for their law school recommendation letters. But outside of work, there was Steve the adventurer, Steve the pilot. He loved flying and owned several 1946 air coupes. They're quirky, charming little planes with no pedals and only a rudder. And he loved giving family members rides, even those terrified of that vintage plane. But once they were airborne, Steve always made them feel safe, and he taught them how to punch through clouds and be amazed at doing that. So one of my favorite stories involves his British mechanic, Don. Don noticed that Steve was struggling to climb into the plane while balancing his crutches, because he lived on crutches since he was young. And so Don decided he was going to install a little hook on the side of the cockpit so Steve could hang on to them while climbing in. Brilliant, right? Until one day when he landed, opened the cockpit, and discovered one crutch still hanging on that hook outside the plane, and the other one missing entirely. He never figured out where it went, and he definitely didn't want the FAA to find out he was dropping objects from the sky that could cause injury and damage. That crutch is probably still hanging in a tree somewhere in a cow pasture. And I always say Steve was short in stature, but enormous on personality. He rose above the stares, the questions, the moments of ignorance. Children and even occasionally adults would scan him up and down and ask, "How did you get that way?" And Steve always met them with grace, humor, and that unmistakable spark. In his last decade, he became a fierce advocate for ADA compliance, a junkyard dog, as we lovingly called him when he was fighting for accessibility. He challenged hospitals, organizations, and building codes, and in the process befriended attorneys from WakeMed, Duke, and UNC Health. WakeMed even invited him to speak at its board meeting. Steve turned his disability into a platform for progress. But above all, Steve was a man who loved deeply. He loved watching his granddaughters grow. He loved the quiet of our cabin in Ashe County. He loved peanut M&Ms, ice cream, and sharing snacks with the dogs. And he loved life fiercely, unapologetically, and fully, and even when cancer finally took him. So you can see he was a force of nature, brilliant, stubborn, dry-wit, principled, and unforgettable. He leaves a space in our lives that nothing else can quite fill, but a legacy that will continue to inspire anyone fortunate enough to have known him. Thank you.
Thomas Benbury Wood will be remembered by Thomas Wood, Jr.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Wood. I'm a lawyer that lives in Edenton. I practice law in Gates County with a firm called Godwin and Wood. There are 2 lawyers in Gates County, and so half of the bar stands here before you. I can imagine. That's probably hard to believe, coming from the 10th district, but it really is a rural area that I enjoy working in. I never had the opportunity to work with my father. I always wanted to. It just never quite worked out. Honestly, I didn't get through law school quick enough is really the underlying reason, but it, something that I always wished that I had had that opportunity. I did have the opportunity to be raised by him, and I found that to be a worthwhile experience. He was a force of nature. Honestly, I have spent my life trying to emulate many of the qualities that he had, and honestly, if I've had any success as a father, as a husband, and honestly, I never would have become a lawyer without him. I owe that largely to him. My dad was raised in Edenton, North Carolina. We have a long family history there. He was actually raised, for the most part, at a farm known as Mulberry Hill, which is a beautiful place out on the Albemarle Sound, where we have spent a great deal of time. Originally, at the time he was born in 1936, they lived at a farm known as Athol, which was another beautiful farm. And actually, they just flue-cured tobacco in Mulberry Hill at the time. Athol was sort of the prime, spot. And when the wartime effort began, World War II, the federal government decided that they needed to condemn 1,800 acres of land in the precise location of Athol. And so there was a large taking there, and the thought was that they could take one farm and be done with it. So they built a base there known as the Marine Corps Air Station Edenton. It was eventually occupied by about 450 Marines, and my dad always claimed they got nothing for it. And, they just the only reason I point that out is because he would later spend his entire career in the exercise of eminent domain on the part of the state. So I guess maybe that was revenge on what happened to him. Who knows? My father was educated in the Chowan County public school system, and he was he entered Episcopal High School in Alexandria, Virginia. He started there in 1953. And he finished in 1955. While he was there, he was a classmate of the Arizona Senator and two-time presidential candidate John McCain. And both of them played football there. And he would always say, I was captain of that team. I was, it's funny, and John McCain wasn't, it was all. He was, later when my children went there, I've had 3 to go, they were always, they had wonderful experiences there, accomplished much, but they had one simple instruction, and that was to bring back the composite of that football team. And when they would all return, empty-handed, it was as if it was just a monumental failure. Their whole year had just been But he went from there, he went to Carolina. He began his undergraduate studies, he finished his undergraduate studies there in 1959. And later finished law school in 1962. He was tenacious till the very end about his beloved Tar Heels. Led to many family arguments, and usually he won those arguments, sadly. But my childhood, although I never worked with my father, I did have the opportunity to observe him and his partner, Burke Haywood, who is here. And what a wonderful thing that was. It was they would travel the state, usually I think they preferred to come to rural areas and act on the state's behalf in these eminent domain highway condemnation cases. And what I witnessed from them was truly, special. It was the sort of thing, I've aspired to that level of oratory my entire life. I'll never get there. But the presentation that they offered and the passion with which they practiced law led me to the inevitable conclusion that I had to do the same thing. And honestly, I concluded that too late. I had quite a bit of cleaning up to do to get into law school, but they bore with me. I remember telling my mother that, and she said, son, I just don't know. You're not quite like your dad, and this and that. We feel like you need to sell insurance. I'll never forget that. And I remember I thought I had some pathetic comeback. I said, well, just because he talks too damn much, or something like that. But I really enjoyed a childhood of watching, them try those cases. Two of the qualities that he possessed that I will never, ever forget were ferocious loyalty. His belief in you was stronger than your belief in yourself. I gave him quite a bit to deal with. I was not awful, but I was far from perfect. I could have been described as overly festive at times. But he bore with me, and he never doubted. It was really something. And then another aspect that he really displayed was that he had a deep belief in the quality of relationships. He would always say, the only thing you have in life are the quality of your relationships. The relationships are it. And he truly lived by that. You always knew exactly where you stood with him. And he was incapable of false pretense. If you felt like you had a strong relationship with him, you better believe you did, because there was nothing under the surface. And that's about all I have to say about that. In closing, I just want to appreciate the opportunity and the effort put in by Nathaniel Adcock and Mary Winstead in putting this program together, and for making it possible, to have the opportunity to honor these wonderful people. Thanks a lot.
That concludes our program. I hope you feel as uplifted and inspired as I do. I always do, but it was just a wonderful session today, I thought. Continuing on the theme of gratitude, I want to thank Judge Brian Collins, who is just so committed and dedicated to attending and presiding over these sessions. He tries to make everyone he can, and we really appreciate it. Wouldn't be a session of court without the clerks and the bailiffs, so we appreciate you being here today. I also want to thank Nathaniel Adcock, our staff liaison, and Whitney Von Hom, the executive director of the bar. And thank all of you once again for being here. Happy Thanksgiving.
We left out the biggest thanks of all goes to Mary Winstead, our fearless leader. That we don't have anything else to do in this courtroom this afternoon. I want to invite you to stick around and visit with each other. We don't do that enough. And I see a lot of people I want to visit with, and I hope you'll stick around and do that, because this is a happy occasion. Thank everybody for being here. And now, Mr. Sheriff, would you please adjourn this special session of the Wake County Superior Court sine die?
All rise. Oh yes, this Honorable Superior Court for the County of this special session is now stands adjourned sine die. Oh yes, God save the citizens, Honorable Court. Have a good weekend, everybody. Happy holidays.